Right to be Read podcast, episode number 120. Interview with Rebecca Patrick Howard.
You are listening to the Right to be Read podcast, and this is your host, Ani Alexander.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Right to be Read podcast, the podcast that inspires and encourages writers. I'm your host, Dani Alexander, and as always, I would like to thank you for listening to this show. And also, I would like, first of all, to thank everyone who is reaching out to me and providing feedback about the show and talking about their impressions and what they would like to hear in the future episodes. It really helps me a lot to make sure that I come up with content that is the most relevant to you. And also, I would like to ask you, if you have just 1 minute, go to iTunes and rate and review the show and also subscribe to that, because actually those are the things that affect podcasts rankings, and once the rankings are high and it gets higher in the What's Hot category, more people will see it, more people will listen to it, and I will be happier. So if you want to make me a favor, please go ahead, review the show and subscribe to that. Thanks a lot in advance. Okay, so let's just start with our episode. And today I have a fiction author over yet again. And I'm really happy to welcome Amazon bestselling paranormal author Rebecca Patrick Howard. So let's go over and see what we have covered during this interview. And I truly hope you'll enjoy it. Hello there, Rebecca. Thank you very much for coming over to my show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm always excited to have fiction authors over because I noticed that I have this huge disbalance of having much more non-fiction authors on my show than fiction ones. So I decided to kind of try to adjust and correct that. Yeah, and I'm very happy that, I'm having yet another fiction author over, because I somehow have a feeling that, fiction writing and fiction marketing seems to be more challenging.
It feels like it sometimes. I've written fiction and nonfiction, and I do think the fiction can be a little harder to push.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so let's start from the very beginning. Were you from those people who always dreamed to be a writer and who kind of, who knew that that's what she will become?
Sort of. I never wanted to be a writer. I always wanted to be a country music singer. And I even moved to Nashville, which is the hub, of country music, and went to college there and got a degree in music business to kind of pursue that career. But I've written all my life. My teachers used to pull me up in front of the class and have me read my stories, and they would jokingly say to my mom she's going to be a writer one day, and I absolutely hated that. Like I fought that my whole life. No, I'm going to be a singer. No, I'm going to be a singer. And I was probably around 20 when I realized, nah, I'm probably going to be a writer.
Okay, so it's very interesting that, I have a feeling that people around you knew that much more in advance than you realized that yourself later on.
Yeah, they seem to.
Interesting. So what happened with not singing anymore and deciding to pursue a different career? Are you still singing?
No. Well, it turns out I have terrible stage fright, which I've never been able to overcome. And I can't write songs. I am not a songwriter. When I try to write songs, it sounds like Dr. Seuss, and I don't mean that in a good way. Like it's really, really bad. So once I got down there and got around, people who were actually really good at it, I realized I was way in over my head. So I enjoy music still. I put a lot of music into my fiction. But I don't sing.
Okay, I see. Okay, so let's imagine you're 20, you realized that, you're going to pursue writer's career and you're not going to sing anymore, at least like seriously. And what happens next? I mean, you obviously had already many things written, I suppose.
Yeah.
So what did you do? How did you decide to change the path and start over?
Well, I decided at that point to go backpack Europe, which, I didn't even have a driver's license. I'd never driven a car. I'd never been anywhere by myself. But for some reason, I thought I could just land in Ireland and make my way all the way to the Czech Republic and be perfectly fine alone. And I did. I mean, it was okay. I didn't have any trouble. But while I did that, I ended up blogging, and this is in 2000, so this was before, blogging was really popular. And I caught the attention of a company that did reviews on youth hostels, and they ended up contacting me and saying, if you'll review youth hostels and cheap restaurants along your way, we'll pay for those. So I just about had the trip paid for by the time I came back. So for a long time, I was a travel writer. I ended up going back and forth to Europe 3 or 4 times a year, and I did that a lot. So my first published book was in 2004, and it was about my solo backpacking trip through Bosnia, Croatia, Hungary, Slovenia, those countries, the former Yugoslavia.
Oh, yeah. Well, interesting. So basically, you got the experiences you were looking for. You enjoyed, doing what you loved doing. So you wrote those articles. You were getting money for that, and you basically ended up publishing a book about that as a result.
Right. And I wrote a lot of fiction during that time. I wrote several novels, but I never felt comfortable letting people read those. For some reason the nonfiction seemed less intrusive. Putting that out there, the fiction felt, way too personal, and I was just really insecure about putting that out in the world. This was in the beginning too, when self-publishing was just taking off, and people kept telling me fiction won't sell, self-published fiction won't sell, so I never even tried.
Okay, I see. So let's dig into that part, because I know that many people feel related to this. To the fear of actually sharing their writing with others and having these doubts and insecure feelings about how it will be perceived, and that they are not emotionally ready to actually, get that feedback yet, and stuff like that. I mean, how did you overcome those?
It was really hard. And, in hindsight, my early fiction is not very good. So it's probably a good thing I didn't unleash it on the world. But I go back and read it now, and it's pretty bad. But I think what helped me is I started going to a lot of like writing retreats, writing conferences, where we would spend 2 or 3 days just sitting in circles, drinking, playing music, and reading our writing aloud to each other. That helped a lot because people were very positive about what I'd written, and being in that creative environment just kind of makes you want to write even more. So that's really, I guess, the trigger that made me feel more confident in sharing it.
Okay, I see. So when was the first time you shared, and how did you share your fiction writing? Did you self-publish your first fiction book?
Yes, I did. I self-published the first fiction book in 2013. So it'll be almost 3 years in January. It will be 3 years in January. It's almost 3 years now.
Okay, yeah, I see. So how did that feel? I mean, you basically you didn't have an audience in place and you were starting from scratch actually. And you put it out there. Were you like all the other writers who kind of check their stats every other hour?
Oh yeah, yeah. I refresh. But I actually did have an audience at that point when my fiction came out because before the fiction, I had written two collections of local ghost stories, and they sold really, really well, kind of amazingly well offline in local stores, in bookstores, festivals. And through that, I had created a fan page on Facebook, and I had over 3,000 people on it who were pretty active. And so when the fiction came out, I did have that platform. Now, not all of them were interested in it. And in fact, when I would set up with the books to sell, I would beg people to read the fiction. I'd say, take a chance on this one. It's better. I promise. This book is better than the other ones. And finally, I mean, it took several months for the fiction to really take off. I think the first month I only sold 30 copies. And now I sell around 30 a day of that particular book. But I mean, I feel responsible for every single copy I sold. I mean, I really hit the ground pushing it.
Okay, I see. So basically, I mean, that illusion that some of the writers, and I'm amazed that some of the writers still have that illusion, that just writing the book and putting it out there is enough to kind of to lean back, relax, and wait for the money.
Right, yeah, that doesn't happen at all. And even with the ghost stories that, were really popular offline. And I'll give you an example. I would set up at a local festival and I would have 100 copies and they'd be sold out by noon. I could never order enough copies of those books. But when I put them online, when I put them on Amazon, I expected, the sales to just start going through the roof. No. I mean, I think I maybe sold five copies in a month. I mean, it was really, really hard. So there was even a discrepancy between what was going on offline and online.
Okay, I see. So, how did you feel about that? I mean, when you saw that your book is not selling and you don't really get what you expected, I mean, did you ever think about giving up, or you were making plan? You were okay. So, let's talk about that.
Well,
how did you, looked at it? I mean, you wanted to give up, but you obviously didn't because we're talking now and you're in a completely different place. So what kept you going forward?
poverty. I mean, we were really poor at the time. My family had no money. We had the illusion of money because, the ghost stories were selling well in the community. But most of what I made from that, which was only $2 or $3 a book, was going back into buying the tent, buying food while we were set up at the festival, gas to get there and back. So there were no profits. We were on food stamps. We were on Medicaid. My mom was giving us like $300 a month for bills. We had absolutely nothing. We were scraping together pennies and quarters to occasionally treat ourselves at McDonald's. And when the fiction came out, my husband and I really put, all of our faith on that, thinking this has got to be it. This has got to be the thing that pulls us out of the situation we're in. And when it didn't, he and I went into an immediate depression. And we didn't know what to do. I mean, we had banked kind of everything on this, and I had worked so hard. I really thought, I had a blog tour set up, I had a platform, I had a good launch, everything that you're supposed to do, and it failed. So I didn't know where to go from then, and I thought we're going to have to go into bankruptcy, lose our house, go live with my mom. All kinds of bad things went through my mind. It wasn't fun. Wasn't a good period.
Okay, so what kept you? I mean, it's kind of, you obviously you didn't lose the hope completely,
Right.
and you still believed in your books in order to continue writing and not giving up the thought that this is really the thing that will pull you out of the situation where you obviously don't belong and don't want to belong.
What helped is, a lot of people say they get their family and friends to do the first initial reviews for their book. I didn't have that. I couldn't get anybody I knew to read my book, much less review it. So, what helped me is those first 10 or 15 reviews for that book were all organic or book bloggers. So, they were honest reviews and they were really positive. So, I thought it may not be selling, but at least people like it.
Uh-huh.
And that encouraged me to try another one. It was a long time before the sequel came out. There were about 8 months between the first two books in the series. But in between there, I'd had my appendix out. This sounds terrible, but I had my appendix out. I was on like pain medication post-op, and I was laying there in bed one night, and I started thinking about something scary that had happened to me. And on the pain medicine, it just made it worse. And I creeped myself out. So I got up and I turned on the light, and I just sat down at the computer and started writing my own ghost story. I thought, I've written everybody else's. Why not write mine? That one took off. That
Uh-huh.
one sold really, really well.
Okay. Well, we have to make a disclaimer here and say that, one shouldn't take pain medications before
No,
writing
no,
their
no, no.
books.
No, because what happened is it didn't help in the writing whatsoever because, I mean, there were so many mistakes and, the thoughts were all over the place. But what it did is, it made my mind fuzzy and it made me scared.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it made me get out of bed and turn the lights on in the house. And that's what made me sit down and start writing. I had to do something with that fear.
Oh, yeah.
Even though it was my own ghost story, I don't know, for some reason thinking about it, it creeped me out 30 years later. So, yeah, no, no, pain meds definitely not good when you're trying to write.
Well,
But
I guess you're kind of, you would never guess that the fear would be the main motivation to go ahead
right.
and write the book that will eventually take off.
Right. And what I ended up doing with that book is, I uploaded it. It sold extraordinarily well in the United Kingdom for some reason. I don't know why. I didn't promote it there at all. And when I saw that the sales, after clicking the dashboard over and over to see that number rising, when I saw that the sales were getting higher, I thought I'll try something new. So I took what I thought was a good part of my fiction novel and I stuck it in the back of the book that was actually selling. And I wrote a little blurb about interested in Rebecca's fiction, try out book one of her paranormal mystery series. And that ended up being, kind of the catalyst that sent the fiction series, into a new selling frenzy. Almost relaunched it, I guess you could say.
Okay, well, it's interesting you say that because I have noticed that very often the same content that writers have, be that a blog post or, or a podcast episode or even a book or whatever they have out there, very often this content doesn't really get that traction and have the results that you expect. But once something else takes off, it drags all the rest with it after that. So you end up selling the book which wasn't selling, but it's the same book written by the same person.
Yeah.
And it's identically the one that you launched and which didn't work. So it's amazing that I guess that's why writers are saying that it's very what you should always do is go ahead and write your next book because you never know
Yes.
which one will take off.
It's true. And that's also why I tell people not to give up on a book that isn't selling fine. Especially today, a lot of people put so much hope on the launch. And if the launch doesn't produce, a number one bestseller, or it doesn't sell hundreds of copies, they think it's a failure. That doesn't necessarily mean it is. We put a lot of importance on that launch, but it doesn't mean the book is over. If you do go ahead and write another one, or you just try a different marketing tactic, people will go back to your backlist if another one takes off. I didn't know that. I know that now because I had a couple of other books that were out, and they ended up even doing a little bit better once the ghost story did well.
Oh, yeah. Well, which kind of makes me think that maybe it's just a matter of getting the minimum level of attention and eyeballs on your book. So let's talk about that. How do you make sure that enough people have found out and seen your book?
You can't limit yourself to one medium, for one thing. In these ebook groups, I see a lot of people worrying about ROI and, is it really worth my time? Is this method going to give me a good return? And although we all need to think like business people and we all need to think like marketers, don't poo-poo an idea just because you think it might not work. I spread myself out over quite a bit of mediums and platforms. Pinterest, I create Pinterest pages which tie in with my fiction series. It helps create that world that my series, has. I'm not very good at Twitter, so Twitter's kind of out for me. But I blog a little bit. I guest post on other people's blogs. I've done a Flickr. I have a Flickr account because my protagonist is a photographer. So I set all of these up in her name. And you can get on Flickr and see Taryn's photography. Not only does this bring in audiences from a bunch of different sites, but it also helps increase your Google presence too.
Yeah, I see. Okay, so you basically say that, in more places you're involved,
yes.
More potential audience you're reaching out, and then you take it from there.
You don't want to spread yourself too thin. You don't want to be spending so much time keeping up multiple websites that you don't have time to write. But it doesn't take long to set accounts up. And then if you schedule yourself, you say, the second Monday of each month, I'm going to devote some time to this site, or, 15 minutes a day, I'm going to work on this site. It's not so bad. I mean, I've kind of got a pattern and a schedule down now where it doesn't take up, much of my time at all.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So basically you drive all these new people from different platforms to your website, right?
Yes, to my website or straight to Amazon, depending on the website and what my motive is for the day or my objective is for the day. But I try to take them straight to my website when I can.
Okay, so we spoke during all the different episodes I've been recording up to now. We have spoken a lot about building email lists to be able to get connected and stay in touch with your readers and stuff like that, and how important that is. Yes. So how do you address that issue on your website? Like we found out that you're using different platforms, you're getting those people's attention. Some of them are coming to your website. So how are you convincing them to leave their email address there?
I changed that quite a bit. From month to month, my opt-in may read a little differently. Right now, the opt-in on my website just says, do you want free ebooks, free chapters from other characters' perspectives? I can't remember what else it says. Sign up now. And that I get 2 to 3 people a day from that one. But the biggest one that I'm having success with right now is I just had a new release called Shaker Town, and it's book 4 in my series. And during the book, one of the minor characters refers to a ghost story that happened to her many years ago. So
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the book, I say, do you want to know what really happened to Susan or what Susan really saw that night by the pond? Enter your email address for a free companion short story from Susan's perspective.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
I've gained, wow, maybe 200 people in about 2 weeks from that. And it's automated. As soon as they enter their email, the story is delivered straight to their
Mm-hmm.
inbox. And this story was written specifically for that purpose. I'm using it for an anthology too, but it's not like I'm giving away a free book or, even a free chapter. This story was written for that opt-in purpose.
Okay, well, very interesting. So basically, you have created something very special and exclusive to your loyal readers who are willing
Yes.
to become your email subscribers.
And yeah, and one of the problems that we get with giving away a lot of free books, sign up and get a free book, is sometimes people sign up just to get, something free, and then they don't turn into loyal readers. In this case, they've already read the book, so
Mm.
they've already purchased a book. Now I'm just getting them on my email list.
Yeah.
So they're already a fan. Hopefully, if they didn't like the book, I'm assuming that they wouldn't opt in. But
Okay, so once you kind of, build up and keep your email list, what's your interaction with them? Are you only emailing them when you have a new release, or in between you're kind of sharing something with them also?
I try to send something out at least once a month, sometimes twice. I do inform them of new books. And the last email I sent out, I did an audio version of one of my books, and they gave me 25 free audio codes to hand out to people. And I gave most of those to people on my subscriber list.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an incentive. And another thing that I do is I'll get on Amazon, and I do this for two reasons. This does, I promise, relate back to the email list. I'll get on Amazon and I'll look at my book and I'll look at all the other books that Amazon recommends. And then I will send those authors emails and be like, hey, your book shows up next to mine. You want to be friends? Because we write in the same genre. And just about everybody has written me back. And I have formed some really great relationships with other authors that way. And occasionally in my newsletter, I will put one of their books in. Like if you're looking for a new ghost story, then try this one. And
Mm-hmm.
it's only books that I've read and books that I like. So I'm not, throwing just random books at them.
Oh, yeah.
But I try to give them other things to look forward to, also, especially when I don't have a new release coming out. At least there's not a lot of ghost stories out there right now. So they like to keep them coming.
Okay, I see. So, how do you deal with? I mean, what kind of writer are you in a way, in the respect that are you plotting extensively and know exactly what your book will be about in detail? So you just sit and write what you have already planned, or you kind of have this flexibility of following the flow and letting a little bit of side throws.
I kind of go with the flow. The last two books I wrote, I had no idea who the killer was until about halfway through the book. No, that's
Okay.
terrible. But I always start out with the opening scene. I have that very well, plotted in my head, and I can see that. So once that's kind of there, I'll sit down and start writing, and from there, yeah, it just comes. I don't outline. I've tried to outline, and it unnerves me. I don't like sticking to something.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I see. But you basically stick to one genre in terms of what you write, right?
In terms of what I've published, I've stuck to one genre. My husband would have quite a bit to say about this. He is frustrated that so far the only thing that I've released are my ghost stories, the paranormal mysteries and the true ghost stories. I actually write in other genres. I haven't released them yet.
Okay.
I'm nervous. I'm nervous about it.
Okay. Well, you need another fear attack to kind of,
Yeah, or something.
to
Maybe.
get into that.
I've got a lot of medical bills right now. That might be that might scare me into the next one.
Oh. Okay, so let's understand, since you had this experience of, releasing nonfiction books and fiction books as well, so you can compare those. Can you tell, what are the differences and how, in which respect it's harder to market fiction books and sell fiction books as opposed to nonfiction?
For one reason, with nonfiction, it's fairly easy to establish yourself as I lost my train of thought here. You can do the blog posts. You can, as an expert. There we go. It's fairly easy to establish yourself as an expert because you can create a website around your theme and the subject matter of the book, and reach out to others with similar interests and cross post, cross promote. With fiction, we don't have that as much. Almost none of us have any kind of back end product, for one thing. We just rely on our stories. The stories are all we have. And I can't call myself, an expert on the paranormal because I don't have a degree in parapsychology, or, I haven't had any specific training in, exorcism. But but I think that is probably, the biggest difference. And the way that I know that is because I did release a nonfiction book about grief, and it centers around the loss of my son. But I also interviewed a lot of other women who had lost children as well. That book was a lot easier to market because I could target grief groups, and I gave them away for free. I'm not saying I went into a grief group and tried to sell my book to grieving parents. I did offer free copies, but I mean, there are grief groups, there are grief websites. Several times I got asked to speak, in front of groups, grief support groups. That was a lot easier than trying to sell a fictitious ghost story, because at that point I'm just reaching random readers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see what you mean. So basically, with fiction, especially for writers who write fiction but don't write series, they write standalone books. It's it seems like the biggest challenge is for those writers, because they don't even have a series, but which by giving out the first book you can gain some readers for it.
Right. That is difficult. The standalone novels are probably the hardest to push. And if you're writing standalone books that are not related to a series, I guess my biggest piece of advice is at least write in the same category. Mm-hmm. Because my fiction and nonfiction, at least some of them, they may not be the same types of books, but they both fall under the paranormal. And I think the same can go, with those who don't write in a series, because you may not get, leftover readers going on to book number 2 in the series, but because you're writing about a similar topic, they might at least move on to that book. Mm-hmm. Writing, if you write a fantasy novel and then you're writing, a sort of dystopian military novel, you're not getting crossover readers there.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And that's the problem, I think. The other thing would be, if you have a series in mind, I would write it first and then do the standalone books, because at that point you've already gained a readership and they'll probably take a chance on your other books as well.
Oh yeah, I see. So basically right now you are a full-time writer, right?
Yes.
Okay, and it took you about 3 years.
Yes, I've been full-time with my books for about a year and a half.
A year and a half.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think, which were the things that worked best from everything that you tried that had the biggest effect on getting where you are now?
What probably had the biggest effect for me was a lot of the things that I did offline. And I know that's not what people want to hear who, are selling Kindles, but I got out in my community and I kind of hit the pavement running. I'm not a very sociable person. I'm really not. But I tried to smile and I tried to talk to people and, engage them and get them interested in my books. And in doing that, I attempted to carry it over online. And that's why I created the Facebook page for Haunted Estill County. I've neglected it a little bit in the past few months, but I did keep it up every day, several times a day, and had a really active community there. And by posting, sharing posts that were within the paranormal, topic, I got a lot of people talking to me and interested in me. And then when the books came out, they sold.
Mm-hmm.
People knew who I was. They knew that I knew what I was talking about, and they liked me.
Mm-hmm.
I can't always say that. I mean, I seem to offend people no matter what I say, but in that world, it worked. I think Facebook. We say this over and over. Facebook doesn't sell books, and it's true. But Facebook does sell you as an author.
Yeah.
And so does Twitter, and so do some of these other social media sites. And I tried to pay a lot of attention to that. I maybe didn't sell a book on it, but I definitely sold myself.
Yeah, exactly. And it builds up credibility and relationships and creates your kind of personal image and brand, right, which people start perceiving in a certain way. So, yes, I believe in that too, that, you shouldn't really stick to only places which sell books, but you should also kind of get out. I mean, it's basically what you said, when you're going out and physically getting involved in your community and putting yourself out there. I mean, Facebook and other social media and different other groups for authors and readers, they are kind of, the online version of a community where you also go out and put yourself out there. So, I agree.
It's true. And you need to think about what you're writing, what you're posting. Try to keep it in line with what you write, too, because that's why people find you. They find you because they like your books, and they want to see more of that. They want to see that person.
Oh, yeah.
So I try to keep that in mind, too. I mean, if it was, I'd probably just post cat videos all day if it was just me, but I try to, throw in some paranormal stuff, too.
Okay, so Rebecca, what are your plans for the future? So once you already, reach the stage where you can do this full time, so you basically, don't have yet another 9-to-5 job getting on the way and not letting you write for those hours while you have to do something else. And while you already established your, income in a such way that, you can afford writing full time. So what are you going to do next?
So I have another book in my series coming out. I have a brand new series that's going to come out probably around Christmas. And the next big step business-wise is I really want to bring my husband on board to work with me so that he isn't working outside of the house. If we could make this kind of a family business, that would be great. We still depend on his income a little bit, and he likes to work. He is a man. He's the provider. He has to give something to the household. And right now, I don't have anything that he can do for that. I'd like to expand somewhat so that he feels like he can help me. He can run part of the business and we can still make an income with it. So that's really the next step that we're working on. I'm going to start consulting in August, hopefully, and he will probably step in and take over a lot of that, the behind the scenes work.
Okay, I see. Well, thank you very much for coming over. I wish you success with everything that you are starting and with your upcoming books. And thanks a lot for sharing your expertise.
Thank you.
Well, I guess it's all for today. If you have already written a book, please check out our services at publishmybook.today. And if you haven't yet, keep listening to the show and, of course, keep writing. I'll meet you next week. Have a great weekend. And thank you once again for listening.